Welcome back. We're minutes away from a press conference, a joint press conference by Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. You're seeing the live visuals coming in from the White House press briefing room, where we will see the two state leaders coming in just a short while ago. So this is what's been happening since this evening. You first had a very lavish, grand ceremonial welcome for Prime Minister Modi to the White House, keeping in protocol with the fact that this is a state visit. The bilateral then has taken place and is on even as we speak, will probably just be ending. Post that, you will see this joint address. Both leaders will read out their statements and then take questions. Following that, you will have Prime Minister Modi's address to a joint session of Congress, and that becomes historical and important because he will be doing this for a second time and will be the only Indian leader to have this honor twice, and among a handful of world leaders who have had this honor or to address a joint session of Congress twice. So that's the itinerary for the evening, U.S. time, of course, late night, early morning, our time. That will be followed by a state dinner. But at the end of the day, why is this visit being seen as so important? What are we expecting to come out of it? That's the conversation we're having this evening on Beyond the Headline. Before we go back to our expert panelists and get their views on this, I just want to play out for you some of the comments that President Biden and Prime Minister Modi made at the entrance of the White House before they went in for that bilateral meeting.
भारतीय समुदाय के लोग अपने टैलेंट, कर्मठता और निष्ठा से अमेरिका में भारत की शान बढ़ा रहे हैं। आप सब हमारे संबंधों की असली ताकत है। आज आपको दिए गए सम्मान के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन और डॉक्टर जिल बाइडेन का हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूं। उनका जितना धन्यवाद करो उतना कम है। करीब 3 दशक पहले एक साधारण नागरिक के रूप में मैं अमेरिका यात्रा पर आया था और उस समय मैंने व्हाइट हाउस को बाहर से देखा था। प्रधानमंत्री बनने के बाद तो मैं स्वयं तो कई बार यहां पर आया हूं, लेकिन इतनी बड़ी संख्या में इंडियन अमेरिकन समुदाय के लिए व्हाइट हाउस के द्वार आज पहली बार खोले गए हैं।
I'm honored to be the first to have you here in 15 years. The United States is honoring and hosting an official visit for the Republic of India. Prime Minister Modi, welcome back to the White House. Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister. Welcome back to the White House. I've long believed that the relationship between the United States and India is will be one of the defining relationships of the 21st century. Two proud nations whose love of freedom secured our independence, bound by the same words in our Constitution. First 3 words, we the people.
All right, so those were some of the comments that were made before that bilateral began. And what you're seeing on your screens is live visuals coming in from the White House press room, where the briefing is likely to begin in a short while from now. So the stage is set for that, and we will be going across live, of course, as soon as that press briefing does begin. But in the interim, let's just get a sense of what we can expect out of here. And We have with us Dr. Kaush Arha. He's also joining us on the show. He's President, Free and Open Indo-Pacific Forum. Dr. Arha, let's talk a bit about, the convergence of interests vis-a-vis China and why that becomes important. When we talk about the defense deal vis-a-vis Russia as well, it's not just about weaning India off Russian arms. It's also about enabling India to make its own and possibly becoming a supplier to other nations. Would that be the right way to look at it?
I think I agree with you about the backdrop of China. But I would also echo Ambassador Puri's comments. The convergence of interests are for a shared adversary and a shared worldview and a shared commitment to the world, a rule-based order. I think those are the three large convergences. Now, U.S. is also the largest global trading partner for India. I think that trade would continue and build more for the good of both economies. So you have economic convergence, you have sort of security convergence. You also have, I think, again, a people-to-people convergence. Now, the question related to China and why that is important, I mean, India has the longest land border with China and an active border dispute going on right now. I think China's views on territorial integrity and sovereignty within the region are rather aggressive and expansive, not only towards India, but also most other neighbors that it has. I think it's in both India's interest and United States' interest that China be able to withstand India being able to withstand Chinese aggression, not only in its border, but also that India be able to keep peace and its interest in the Indian Ocean. I think so those are the large convergences. I think on the Russia side, it is important as India grows economically and diplomatically and militarily, that it upgrades its military equipment. You pay what you get. I mean, you get what you pay for. And I think the Russian equipment, as has been shown in the Ukraine battlefields, is substandard. I think American
Dr.
equipment...
Arha, is there truly a belief that India is going to go off Russian weaponry? I mean, I've been speaking to experts who say that Russian weaponry or Russian defense systems are going to be in India for at least the next 2 decades. That's a long and deep partnership. Are we expecting a switch here? A reduction in dependence? What's the goal? What's the aim?
Well, I don't think, again, this is a decision for India, not for the rest of us.
Yeah.
But I think from the Indian perspective, instead of saying what may or may not happen, if we just looked at the facts, certainly the overwhelming dependence on Russian armaments is decreasing and decreasing quite fast. I think that trend will continue. How fast it is and whether it's in its entirety is to be seen. So I think the question is not to go cold turkey and just switch off overnight, but certainly the trend in India's own interest is to upgrade its military equipment and military abilities and capacities. And India is aggressively doing so with partnership with not only the United States, but with France, with Israel, with UK, with other countries. So I think that is the trend and it will continue. And I think part of that is a big chunk of what the joint statement on this state visit is.
Just to put that into perspective, India's dependence on Russian equipment has in fact come down to about 45% in the last few years, from closer to 60-70% earlier. There you're seeing the details over there. This is as per the CIPRI report. But the fact is that this is a long-standing relationship as well. I want Ambassador Puri here to weigh in. It's not an either-or situation as far as India is concerned, right? We've shown the deftness to balance these relationships through the last 1 year in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war, that we're not going to get into this with us or against us kind of binary.
Tamanna, I have to first compliment you. You are perhaps the only one in the Indian media scene who has noted and at least put it out in a very interesting manner how balancing has been used to leverage us to go into what Dr. Arha says, upgrade yourselves. These are arguments which get made. You are hearing different people. I'm sure you're talking to defense experts. Different people have various things to say. But let us also remember, we are one of the largest buyers of weaponry system, including, especially now, more and more sophisticated weapons, platforms, delivery systems, etc., from the world. Therefore, it's truly interesting that actually the balance has got leveraged. But look, we have taken political decisions. There must be good reasons behind it. I am not an expert on it, but I do think, and I want to draw your attention, that we have invested in American technologies. Look at the heavy lift aircraft that we use, the C-70s, the C-137s, the Rafale aircraft from the French. So, these are things that have happened in the past. Will they accelerate? To some extent, I have little doubt. How much will they accelerate? Others may like it to accelerate. In toto, will it actually happen? It's difficult to say so, because at least for the next decade plus, the dependency remains. It's not particularly easy to make basic changes in main battle tanks and stuff like that. But on the other hand, we have to become a major producer of defense equipment because we need it. And that's particularly important for us.
Yep. And I think more than switching dependence from A to B, it's about self-sufficiency as well. Dr. Arha wants to come in? Yes.
Yes, I do. I mean, I think I do take slight exception with your framing of it. It sort of implies that either it's the U.S. goal or it's a non-India goal to sort of have India switch out of the Russian. India can make its own judgments. Nobody's telling what to do. India, hopefully, as Mr. Puri mentioned, is the largest importer of arms. Hopefully, you get the quality you pay for. And it's Indian decision what quality they want. If they're fine with the Russian, that's perfectly fine. If they want to upgrade it, that's also fine. I think in the long term, my perspective and a shared perspective would be in the long term, it's in India's interest and its allies, the entire Quad, including America and including Europe and others, that India becomes an important, self-sufficient military power of extraordinary ability and capacities. There are many ways to get there. It's an Indian decision. I think we can get more into that particular aspect of it, but that is not either the crux or the only element of the strategic partnership. The strategic partnership truly has to be seen in its breadth and depth, which I don't think, it'd be difficult to make a point that America has such a wide and deep partnership at this moment with very few, if any, other countries as shown with India. And in that way, India is even unique among the Quad nations. We have the strongest partnership with Japan, but it probably does not have the breadth and the depth of it like we do with India. Same thing with Australia, and same thing with several European countries. So I would like to sort of emphasize really that the wide landscape under which the convergence is happening and the future is bright in that perspective.
Okay.
I think the military is an important element.
I mean, we're talking about the military. I get that point, Dr. Arha, but we're talking about the military aspect of it because the biggest announcements have been made in that space. And, we'll buy from you, but also transfer technology to us has been an ongoing conversation. I'm putting it very simply, but I'll take it to Ambassador Puri to put that into perspective. We want to make our own defense equipment. We don't want to keep being the largest buyers in the world. And that's a stated goal. Yes, Ambassador Puri.
Tamanna, you're right. But I think Dr. Arha is saying the same thing as we are all, that, India and perhaps, as he says, the United States also has an interest in India being a large military player, also self-sufficient, able to do its own thing, etc. Now, when you talk about the Quad, and I'm only limiting myself to that and not referring to AUKUS, which also we should not forget, because, that's a different kind of military relationship, which includes two of those who are members of the Quad. Now, the Americans' relationship with Australia and Japan is, of course, of a completely different order. I mean, I dare say it's a relationship of allies. India and the United States are two huge democracies, of course. Uh, you know, people who share some kind of values in a large measure. But as India is becoming a larger and larger economy, we are becoming a country of much greater interest to the United States. I think that's one aspect that should be remembered, along with the fact of changing geopolitics. When you add these particular two things, there becomes a situation, in my view, of a natural convergence of interests. And I'm not talking about the Middle East, etc. We can add all of those, including the global South, all of this. Therefore, I do see a growing convergence of interests. These are geopolitical interests, they're geostrategic interests. And of course, at the end of it, for India, which is on its way to becoming today the fourth largest economy, becoming the third largest economy, you have to have a very strong industrial base, a manufacturing base, and that has to include defense equipment and defense weapons, manufacturing abilities, and so on and so forth, apart from space, clean technologies, and every single one. So I see this to be a very important inflection point, which recognizes the rise of India in that sense. And so, therefore, the importance of India. And this recognition, I think if we take it together, I personally think that we can contribute to both our economies, our societies, and also generate a lot of public good, which is good for humankind as such. And I'm referring to green technologies, I'm referring to pandemic, food security, etc., quite apart from, global commons and a rules-based order.
Absolutely. It's a yes, Dr. Arha.
Yeah, no, I agree with Ambassador Puri. Now, Ambassador Puri and I are on what we call very violent agreement. I think you're raising an issue as if America is forcing India to switch side or buy. I think it hasn't been. People like me would actually argue that we have been too lenient on America vis-a-vis Ukraine and Russia, since we want to get a little bit controversy in this. I think that there's a different arguments to say, can you criticize Russia or not buy its oil? I think that is, we have taken a fine line. But it is difficult for India. I think it's a little bit difficult for India to be the home of democracy and not be able to say one word in support of a democracy under attack by an authoritarian government. And calling for peace on that matter, everybody likes peace. But tomorrow, if China were to invade Arunachal Pradesh, and if I sat here and argued and said there should be peace, it would be ridiculous. I would say that the aggressor needs to move back, and then we will talk about peace. So I think that's a big difference. It's different being able to call that than whether you buy Russian oil or whether you have Russian armaments. They're two different things. You are now a strong enough country, like Mr. Puri just mentioned, third largest economy going, fourth largest economy going to be third largest economy. You want to run a foreign policy of national interest. You today, your buying of oil from Russia and armaments, Russia is more dependent on you than you are dependent on Russia. Okay. So you have the ability to tell Russia, like Prime Minister Modi did up in Central Asia, that, hey, we will take your stuff, but what you're doing in Ukraine is wrong. You can do that
okay,
both.
I'm gonna let Ambassador Puri respond to that, because I didn't hear India condone Russia's actions anywhere. Okay, I'll let Ambassador Puri speak on that. Yes.
Thank you. Tamanna, you're absolutely right. We have not condoned their actions. Dr. Arha, I like what he said. He said, let's inject a little bit of, action into this discussion that we are happening. And he's absolutely right to make his point. But, my understanding of this visit and India, the United States coming together is talking about convergence. Now, it's not that as a democracy we have one view and they have another view. Dr. Arha, I can point out to you endless examples of the United States looking the other way in terms of what's happening. It's not people are looking the other way. No one is. But, let's talk in terms of what you are really the specialist for, which is working on convergences and the fact that today we are seeing convergences of interest. And that is exactly what we are working for in this matter. You mentioned one particular hypothetical case. I want to refrain from commenting on it, but the answer to it is very simple. India needs to be a strong manufacturing economy, including in the area of arms and ammunition. It's not good words and talks from others who are going to make the difference in case that hypothetical thing comes through. We should be in an ability, A, not to let it happen, and B, if it ever happens, to ensure that the answer is truly significant, as was done in the case of Galwan. But, let's leave that out and let's focus on the convergences, because the convergences are aplenty and they are good. And I personally see that, these convergences have the possibility of delivering lots of things which are in global good. You mentioned the digital economy. I would like to underscore the issue of green technologies. And, the fact that we are having to confront climate change and what we do it. Pandemics is the other side of it, global food and so on. And so therefore, I do believe that these two large societies, large economies, large countries coming together is something which can deliver for people in their countries as well as
we are focusing on the positives. Our entire coverage has been about that, but I think it's important to talk about the elephants in the room.
Sure.
And what may not be said in the White House in that bilateral right now, but diplomacy is many, many people speaking to each other. I'm going to take a very short break, but this is getting interesting. We're going to come back with it in just a bit. Welcome back. You're watching an extended version of Beyond the Headline this evening as we're keeping vigil and watch over a press conference that's expected to take place any time now between Prime Minister Modi and Joe Biden, the U.S. president. They've been in a bilateral meeting for the last couple of hours, actually. The press conference was supposed to start about 45 minutes ago. It's overshot in time. We're not quite sure what the delay is about, but it has been a fruitful and important meeting, no less. I'm going to just play out for you a small sound clip from Prime Minister Modi just at the start of when they began that bilateral and that conversation. Listen in.
Excellent. आप हमेशा भारत के बहुत अच्छे शुभचिंतक रहे और जब भी आपको जहां भी अवसर मिला है आपने हमेशा भारत और अमेरिका के संबंधों के महात्म्य को बहुत बड़ा बल दिया है, बहुत बड़ी ताकत दी है। और मुझे याद है कि 8 साल पहले यूएस इंडिया बिजनेस काउंसिल को संबोधित करते हुए आपने एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात कही थी और आपने कहा था, आवर गोल इज टू बिकम इंडिया बेस्ट फ्रेंड। ये आपके शब्द आज भी गूंज रहे हैं। भारत के प्रति आपकी यही व्यक्तिगत प्रतिबद्धता हमें अनेक बोल्ड और महत्वाकांक्षी।
All right, so this was a quick statement before the bilateral begins. And Ambassador Puri, this is quite interesting. So what happens at these conversations? We know that they let the cameras in for a bit, take pictures of the leaders talking to each other. There's a small statement and then everyone's shunted out, isn't it?
Right. I mean, this is just what they say, an opening statement for the cameras. After that, these are at one-on-one or maybe 1 plus 2 or 3 other people and others, perhaps the most serious conversations about building not just relationships, but, getting over those things which are niggling on some of the more difficult things. And these things do happen in things. Many things have to be, as they say, taken all the way up to the highest leadership levels. And so these conversations are very important. And they are also about building chemistry. And that requires a degree of privacy. That I hope you will realize and appreciate. But then it comes out in the public, and you will see it happening.
Yeah, we're seeing more activity in that press briefing, so we can hope for that statement to start any time now, really. Just talking about the chemistry between the two leaders, Ambassador Puri, because President Biden has mentioned this as well. They have been speaking to each other since President Biden was vice president under President Obama. So that sort of connection or sort of chemistry, as you put it, is there. How important is that in the big picture? Because the crossing the T's and dotting the I's is done by an army of diplomats, isn't it?
Tamanna, you are right. India and the United States, and in particular the United States, is a huge bureaucracy. And things don't happen if they are not in the interest of the country and country as defined by the administration as such. But obviously, the president in the US matters and the prime minister in India matters because their own, let me say, the directions that they give to their administrations, their teams, their bureaucracies, their diplomats, all of them tend to give people an inclination in which direction the individual, the leader, is tilted. Now, if something is totally against, it's not going to happen. And the leader will also be convinced of it the other way around. But there is always this particular element of a degree of nudge, a degree of feeling good. And in this, I must say, the world, for all this Zoom and AI and so on, we still are about people, and people matter. And when you look at somebody, you take a decision. These things are important, and leaders therefore meet. Otherwise, you remember over the COVID years, we did all these summits through Zooms and these kind of, virtual meetings. Did they really result in anything serious happening? No, everybody said it's peace and that was it. But when you meet, it makes a difference. And that's why this chemistry, the word that we use, is a particularly important element. President Biden, of course, having been vice president earlier, has had the opportunity of knowing Prime Minister Modi in various ways. But in the last three odd years, they've met so many times in various contexts, and in the last few months, in any case, in several contexts. So I see this as an important and useful element of building the ties between the two countries.
Okay. You're seeing all of that very interesting footage coming in from the East Room, I'm told, of the White House, but that briefing is going to take place. You're seeing External Affairs Minister Dr. Shankar on your screens right now. So we're waiting. So the VIP section has sort of gotten full up right in the beginning, and then we're waiting for the two dignitaries to arrive. And of course, we'll be cutting across to that as well. Dr. Arha, I want to come to you on the role of the diaspora and how important that seems to be in all of this. And you're seeing that as a recurring theme throughout, whether they're presence at the gates of the White House, on the lawns of the White House, in the meetings, etc. Is that business as usual for any visiting leader, or is that specific to the soft power of India?
No, I think there are two issues. While you were mentioning Shankar, your Ministry of External Affairs, the lady who got up is your DCM, Sri Priya Ranganathan, so it does a good job here. And this is a large room to hold this. Personal chemistry is important. As Ambassador Puri said, the two importance on personal chemistry. You can override bureaucratic hurdles, and you can have more direct conversations on differences. As part of the diaspora issue is, I think this is again a strength of the US-American relationship. I don't think there are any other country that has as dedicated, as committed, as aggressive, and as present a diaspora related to their state visit as Indians are to the visit of Prime Minister Modi, whether it be Prime Minister Kishida, whether it be Macron, even whether Rishi Sunak was here. You would not see throngs of sort of Brits and Japanese and French people lining up as you find Indians when you have Modi and a state visit associated with it. And the strength of the Indian diaspora, which was sort of traditionally in sort of technological area, whether it be in computers or health or even to some degree medicine or business, now has sort of spilled over into more sort of political engagement, whether it be legal, you have more judges, you also have more politicians, you have more government officials. So it's a rather active and flourishing. And one of the important things to come out of this may be the partnership on the critical and emerging technologies and something towards this migration and mobility agreement that India is aspiring to with Australia and UK and EU. Something like that, that allows a greater exchange of at least the technical side of people in high tech between India and US, both sides, I think would go a long way. And also another one is to sort of come up and bolster the scholarship, whether they be the Fulbright Nehru Scholarship, or whether it's something like the Martin Luther King Gandhi Scholarship, or come up with a new one on something Sardar Patel and Alexander Hamilton, or whatever it may be. So to engage this, both US, India, diaspora, not only together, but together solving world's problems, especially in the digital sphere, together working towards solving so-called public goods that Ambassador Puri talked about. I think those are the sort of issues that can be built about, and I think at the bottom are really the strongest area for growth among the two countries. Yep. Back to you. But one more thing, since we are talking about violent sort of agreement between me and Ambassador Puri on the convergence of interest. Right. That should be the theme, that is the theme, that will remain the theme for all the reasons that Mr. Puri talked about.
Yeah.
But it also allows us, the relationship, to become as mature that we can actively also discuss our disagreements without having those disagreements have a disproportionate effect on the relationship or divert us from the converging interests. So I think the Russia-Ukraine issue has to be put into that context. It's an important one. It is something we can talk about, but it is not as important as the converging interests. So that's what we're going to discuss in this bilateral meeting. Back to you.
Yeah. No, I think my new favorite term is going to be violent agreement. If you agree, it should definitely be violent. The reason that this partnership is being called a key partnership of the century is because these are two democracies, the oldest and the largest. So I'm sure there is enough out there to also question each other, Ambassador Puri, and I want to come to you on that. You have some congressmen and congresswomen who are not very happy to listen to Prime Minister Modi in a few hours from now, and they've been very vocal about it. You have an interview of former President Obama, which has been trending online, etc. So all of these voices are also there. And I'm sure this is something that the Indian government accounts for when on visits like this, isn't it?
Tamanna, you're absolutely right, and I completely agree with Dr. Arha. Look, relationships when they are mature, and let me give you the example of Europe and the United States.
I see them.
You know,
I see them. I have spotted them. I'm sorry, we're going to go in for the moment we've been waiting for. Let's cut across.
Yeah, let's go.